Hello, everyone. I'm Samuel Reiman, and this is Samuel's Racing Show, and I am joined all the way from Colorado virtually by Mr. Joe Peak.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Sam. I loved doing this last time.
And Joe, whenever you're on, we always enjoy talking about open wheel racing, IndyCar, Formula One, Formula E, sometimes other series as well. IndyCar had a doubleheader at Mid-Ohio last weekend. That was kind of exciting. The Formula One race also kind of exciting. Maybe not the most thrilling race from the drop of the green flag to the drop of a checkered flag, but it had some bizarre moments, and people are going to notice from the title, we're not particularly talking about the race. We're going to be talking about the F1 silly season and how we think it's going to look next year. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that race because I think it's worthy of a bit of a chat.
I think one thing that it highlighted is that the F1 drivers maybe need to start looking at other series that do rolling starts and study is one thing, because any of us who've followed a series that frequently has rolling starts, as an IndyCar fan, and when I was younger, I was much more into NASCAR. As soon as they had that mess on the front straight, I was just like, well, who didn't see that coming? So I think there's nothing wrong with the way that the rules are implemented right now, other than maybe they need to enforce drivers staying packed up instead of trying to get runs and be tricky like that. So honestly, it was just, to me, a very expensive lesson that a few drivers had to learn.
Yeah, I mean, the way the rules are written, I don't blame Valtteri Bottas for doing what he did at all. I mean, he knew if he went early that Lewis Hamilton was going to get a good run on him and pass him into the first corner. To reduce the length of that straight was the best thing he could do. That meant going late. And as you mentioned, anyone who's done any kind of virtual online racing or who has watched IndyCar or sports cars or NASCAR, any series with rolling starts, will know that sometimes if a leader leaves it until late to go on a rolling start, that can cause check-ups further back. A Formula One car accelerates and brakes so quickly that those accordion effects are exemplified, tenfold from what we'd see in any other series. And unfortunately, that had expensive consequences. But everyone was all right.
Yeah, and that was the good thing. I was genuinely worried when we saw, I think it was Sainz holding his wrist, and glad that everything came out okay on that end. But yeah, honestly, it's just a case of, well, they're so used to things being a certain way, and now that they had this sort of rare situation for them, instead of going immediately, they were kind of caught out by their inexperience. So simple as that.
Well, we still had 12, 13 cars left to race and put on a bit of a show for us. And the field was small enough that both Ferraris could score points in their 1,000th race. So kudos to them. We'll get to Ferrari in just a moment because we're going to be talking about the Formula One 2021 lineup. But I want to imagine, Joe, we'll be serious about this, but throughout our conversation, I want to imagine that we have like a reverse style NFL draft going on here. And what that means is, imagine Mercedes had access to any driver they wanted, because they're the top team right now. And, I guess they have the top bank account, arguably, alongside Ferrari. And then we go down to Red Bull, who's second in the team standings. Who are the two best drivers they could choose? And, let's kind of play around with it a bit like that. But also we're going to, be serious with this and say, okay, what do we think a lineup's really going to look like in 2021? So let's jump straight to it. Mercedes currently have Bottas contracted for next season. Lewis Hamilton has yet to sign a contract, although my guess is that he'll want to go for 8 world titles before he has any thoughts of retiring, because I think he does want to try and beat Michael Schumacher. Do you see Mercedes having any other lineup than Hamilton and Bottas? And but in the second question to that, in your perfect world, who do you think were the two drivers that belong at Mercedes?
Honestly, I can't see them giving up on Hamilton. If he wants to keep racing for them, then there's no reason they would not want him. I mean, it would just make no sense at all for them to say no to him. And I can't see reason for him to not return. with the way things are, especially since it's going to be stable next season anyways in the rule set. As far as the two that I think deserve to be there most, that's tricky because it's to me it's well, should it be deserves as in the fastest drivers, or deserves as in the drivers that haven't gotten a shot that maybe could do amazing things with the Mercedes? Because I think, and I'm sure some people who know me and my opinions in the past, Max Verstappen is the other fastest driver out there. Honestly, he's proven himself time and time again, regardless of my feelings about how he races. He is incredibly quick and continues to win whenever the opportunity falls in his lap. So I think if they wanted the two fastest, Hamilton and Verstappen would be the two fastest on the grid, frankly. As far as someone who deserves a shot at that hasn't had a chance in a quick car, well, I guess going on recent events, and a driver that I think some might argue has had a shot in a quick car is Sergio Perez. His time at McLaren, that McLaren was not good. That was at the beginning of their sort of downfall, if you will, where that car, I mean, neither he or Jensen in that year could manage a podium, if that tells you anything. Both of them who are known for being able to pick up scraps when things are thrown at them. Sergio, especially. I mean, he's up to 5 or 6 podiums at this point over his career, and never really been in, any of the fast teams yet. So I would love to see Sergio get a chance in the Mercedes, just to see what would happen and see if he would snag a lot of wins, or if he would give someone like Hamilton a challenge.
That would be interesting to see. I hadn't thought about Sergio. I thought you would say Max. Realistically, I can't see it ever happening, on the basis that from what we're seeing at Red Bull, Verstappen likes to drive a car that other people can't drive. We've seen this before. I think we see it with Fernando Alonso. I think he likes to drive a car that other drivers can't drive. Almost Michael Schumacher. Granted, I was much younger when I was watching him race, but from what I've heard, the way he drove a car was very different to how other drivers drove it. And I think we're also seeing the same in MotoGP with Marc Marquez. Being out this season, and all of a sudden Repsol Honda, normally one of the front running teams in the paddock, well, they've got a bike that only Marquez can ride, and no one else seems to be able to ride it any good, and now they're running around at the back while Marquez recovering. So the reason I don't see anything like Lewis and Max ever happening is because I think they'd be a bit of an argument over which way to set up a car, who to set up a car for. So realistically, at the moment, I don't think we're going to see anything but Hamilton and Bottas, because Bottas is a good number 2 driver, which is what Mercedes want. Eventually, George Russell will come to the team, and I'm sure he won't want to play second fiddle. But unfortunately, with even though he impresses in qualifying in Williams, his races performances aren't always impressive. And I don't think as a guarantee he wouldn't just be another number 2 driver if he went to Mercedes.
I think that's probably likely, considering his lack of experience right now is part of the issue with George. I'd love to see George up there as well, because I think we've seen, based on his now, granted, you could say that he's not been up against a really good teammate yet, because Kubica was pretty well past his prime. His was such a feel-good story, and I like him as a driver, but it was obvious that he there you go, right there, that he unfortunately missed his best years, which is a real shame, because I would have liked to have seen him see more success. But George, up against Latifi, who's a rookie and is still kind of finding his feet, even though he's been decently quick, he's definitely a lot closer than Robert was. I think George will see come to the fore as he has some of that experience, honestly, getting to race other cars. Because if you think about last season, he was hardly ever racing anybody but his teammate. So it's kind of a case of, it's hard to read, but all the signs are pointing to George has something. And almost kind of a Maldonado case where, they kept with him because he was quick when he was quick, and you could teach a driver like that to tone down the craziness, or at least we thought with Maldonado. uh, and same thing with George. He's clearly quick, and I think with some time and some grooming, he could probably become the whole package.
All right, so there's lots of future options potentially for Mercedes, which is good for them. But I think right now they're going to stick with Hamilton and Bottas, and who can blame them? So let's go to the team that sits second in the constructors' standings, and that's Red Bull. Current drivers are Max Verstappen and Alex Albon. Drivers who are signed on for next season are Max Verstappen. And that number 2 seat is going to be very much a hot debate over the next couple of months. Already is.
So I've talked to you, I think, some about this, and I know some people already know my feelings on it, which I don't know how controversial this is or not. I still say if I was Pierre Gasly, I wouldn't want that seat. I would not want to go up there. And it's not because of Max Verstappen. It's because AlphaTauri's been proven itself to have a pretty decent car at times. I think if you work well with the team and you're getting good results, why leave? And if the team, especially based on what we've seen, where they're really trying to make Albon work this time, which credit to Red Bull for finally not trying to just juggle, whoever in there and hope that they get immediate results. I think with them, leaning towards Albon, just kind of play along and be like, yeah, sure, okay, and continue to prove himself. If he keeps racking up the results, eventually it'll be something where they cannot ignore it. And at that point, he has a lot of leverage in his contract, which who wouldn't want to be able to ask for a little bit more based on what you've shown you can do.
And Albon currently sits 5th in the drivers' standings. It's Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen, Norris, and then Albon. Granted, that's changing week to week because 4th on back in the championship is actually quite tight. Formula 1.5, I think people are calling it. I think the fact that Albon got 3rd place at Mugello was a good sign and maybe a bit of a momentum builder. Now he's got 1 podium. Does that mean the others will come easier in the future? But yeah, it's almost like he got luck of a draw in that he was the second driver in the last couple of years to go up against Verstappen and not perform too well at first. And then everyone started to realize, oh, okay, maybe it's not Gasly and Albon. Maybe that's not the problem. The problem is called being Verstappen's teammate. So people are being a bit more patient with Albon, and he's still got a few races left this year to try and prove himself, and I hope we see another couple of podiums out of him. I agree that AlphaTauri could be a strong team. I mean, yes, they're always going to be Red Bull's number 2 team, but that doesn't mean Red Bull can't finish 1st and 2nd and AlphaTauri 3rd and 4th.
Exactly. Yeah. And well, we've seen if something happens to the Red Bull guys, and obviously no team is immune to having those issues. Those are further wins that he could pick up. I think that it's with Albon, I'm so torn because it does feel like last season maybe was a bit of a false dawn, and that it seemed like, oh, well, he's got a lot of potential here. And I think there might be some speed for him to find. But I'm not sure. It's hard to tell if it's psychological. Like you said, it's just being Max Verstappen's teammate. And when you get whomped, and especially how ruthless he can be, that probably is hard to recover from mentally. I think that regardless, Red Bull should at least wait until the end of the season to make a determination on Albon, because that'll be about a season and a half, just shy of that. And that should give enough information on if they think they should stay with him. Because honestly, switching them out of the middle of the season again just would be kind of ludicrous, if I'm honest.
All right, so let's move on to the 3rd top team in the constructor standings. And currently, and I say currently because I think that could switch around a couple more times by the end of this year.
I hope you're not going to say Ferrari.
No, it's not Ferrari. Do you know who it is?
Actually, I haven't been paying close attention. It's McLaren, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's okay. Right. Oven Chet.
I see
what I was going
that.
for. Yeah. Yeah, Norris is fourth in the driver's standing. Stroll is six. Sorry, do I think
Stroll
Stroll
moved
is
to
sixth?
McLaren?
No, yeah. Where the hell is Sainz? Sainz is 11th. Oh, so
He's had some bad luck.
he has. So McLaren have already confirmed their lineup for next year. Ricciardo and Norris. Don't think many people would argue against Norris. Do you think Ricciardo is a good second choice? Because initially I was thinking, is he past his prime a little bit? But then every now and then when he has the car at Renault, he does put on some good performances.
I don't want to say he's past his prime. I think he's suddenly finding himself in a car that he's not as used to. Because I mean, up until Renault, obviously he was used to Red Bull, and so it was a little bit, even though it was a different team from Toro Rosso and a different car, that transition is made so much easier by having a lot of the higher ups that are willing to give the information necessary and things like that to make sure that it's a good transition for him. So I think it's just a case of he's wearing completely new shoes and hasn't gotten used to them. McLaren, he might fall victim to that again. It depends on what he's learned coming into Renault and realizing, okay, these are the questions I need to ask. These are the things I need to do to get up to speed quicker. So I think again, it's just basically kind of a we have to wait and see situation with him.
I do like the fact that McLaren are going to be going with a younger driver and a more experienced driver. I think that combination always works well. If you have two experienced drivers, sometimes you end up with subpar performances, and but if you have two young drivers, sometimes you end up with a subpar car. And so, a mixture, I think, of Norris and Ricciardo will be good there. And it should make for some fun off-track moments as well, I'm sure. So, of course, in my slip-up there, I revealed that Lance Stroll was sixth in the points. If you were McLaren and you had the choice of anyone and you didn't have anybody signed, who would have you taken out of a midfield? If you were the third best team in Formula One and you couldn't have Verstappen, you couldn't have a Red Bull number 2 driver, you couldn't have Hamilton or Bottas, who are the two best midfield drivers that you would want to snatch up?
Well, I mean, I already kind of gave away my answer before, and I feel like it's not like it's never happened that a driver has gone back to a team before. So Perez, put Perez back into McLaren, give him a second shot at it, see what he can do. The other one, because I don't want to keep giving the same answers over and over again. I think that at this point, because of what we saw with Hulkenberg coming back, he would be a solid choice. I think if you had the young one of Norris, put the Hulk in there. Very experienced, consistent. Now, I'm not as big of a cheerleader of him as some people. I wanted to see him get that podium that I know someday he could get if he had the right shot. But I think if you're looking for an experienced head, and especially with looking for free agents, Hulkenberg seems like an obvious choice.
I'm sure this isn't the last time we're going to talk about Hulkenberg, because the next team that currently sits fourth in the constructor standings right now is Racing Point, going on Aston Martin for the 2021 season. They've already signed Vettel, which pretty much means Stroll will be the second driver. Vettel and Stroll, they're going from Perez and Stroll. Is that a bit of a step back performance-wise? Because, a lot of people would say, well, get Stroll out of there, but he's sixth in the points. He was fourth in the points. And, had he not had that puncture during the race the other day, he probably would still be fourth in the points.
If you look at the way Stroll has been last season and this season, he picked up as last season went on. And like you said, he's been pretty good this season. Some, including myself, have at times put it down to luck, but there's only so many times that you can get lucky before it becomes a trend. So begrudgingly, I will give Stroll the credit that he has shown himself to be a better driver than we anticipated. So I don't think it's going to be a huge step back. And I'm pretty sure that the people at Racing Point understood that. And they knew that they were probably going to be up against the gun, considering Stroll's connections, if you will, in the team, of trying to replace him. So, and instead of trying to make things sticky and be like, well, we need this guy because, you know, Perez is faster and more experienced. It's, well, he's only, you know, if he's marginally slower, or if honestly he's got more points, like you said, it's like, well, we kind of have to. We'd have no choice but to say goodbye to Perez, as sad as it is. So I think I don't think it's that bad of a choice. But that said, I think if Stroll doesn't perform, he's going to see a lot of heat from fans, from critics. He won't see heat from within the team, or at least you wouldn't think. But he's now basically, especially up against Vettel, he's got to show himself to be worthy of this seat that he's kind of inherited.
On a scale of 1 being not satisfied at all to 10 being very satisfied, how satisfied are you to see Vettel get that drive?
10 being most satisfied?
Yeah, 10 being, oh, this is a great decision.
7.
6.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think, well, here's the thing. I didn't like the sound of it when I first heard it. But then you see the occasional moments this year where even though Vettel doesn't have the pace of Leclerc, it does seem like it's more of a car that's built to Leclerc's driving talents. You know, Vettel, I think they've pointed out in the past that the cars in the early 2010s were much different to drive than the modern day cars, and he did a much better job with them. So I have a feeling the Ferrari right now doesn't behave in the way that Sebastian Vettel wants it to during the corners. And every now and then you'll hear him say smart things over the radio. You know, he sounds smarter than his strategist sometimes over the radio. And so you do wonder, okay, you know, like I say, you do wonder if you put him back into a good performing car, will he get good results? I hope he does. I like the guy. But at the same time, I'm just not sure how much you're gaining from kicking Perez out of a ride and replacing him with Vettel.
Yeah, well, I heard one of the pundits during the race, you know, talk about how are they going to pass up a 4-time champion. So your resume says a lot, and his resume is one of the best in Formula One statistically. So I don't blame them. I'm more shocked because I thought you were a bit of a Vettel fan, but I guess I don't know. I figured you would be more happy about him getting out of Ferrari and potentially into a car that right now is doing better than Ferrari. And I guess for me, the reason I don't give it a higher number than a 7 is because the way he's now being so solidly beat by Leclerc. That's not like the Vettel of old. The closest I can think of is when Ricciardo came in to Red Bull and beat him in that one season they had together there, which at the time was extremely unusual for Vettel to be destabilized in that way. So I don't know. It's hard to tell if it's a psychological thing or now that he's what, 31 or somewhere around there. I'm trying to remember how old he is. Another one that's getting a little bit up there. So maybe the edge is going away. I don't know, but he's been unusually outperformed by Leclerc this year. I'll put it that way.
So to recap everything so far, Mercedes have gone with Bottas. We think I'll go with Hamilton and Bottas. We think that's a good choice. Red Bull have gone with Max Verstappen. We'll think they'll go with Verstappen and Albon. That's the choice we want them to go with. McLaren have gone with Ricciardo and Norris. It's probably a good call, but I like the idea Joe thought of Perez and Norris. That would have been interesting to see how that would have done. A fourth team, Racing Point going on, Aston Martin. Lance Stroll, can't get rid of him. And right now, why would you want to? It's debatable if Vettel should be the driver in that second seat or not, but he is. And it's interesting, this point, we haven't mentioned Charles Leclerc at all. We're going to continue not to mention him because Ferrari is not the fifth team in the constructor standings. It is Renault going on Alpine or Alpine, whatever you want to call it. Their drivers for next season are Ocon and Alonso. And I think we can, well, I hope you'll agree with me here, Joe, that I'm not sure I like that choice of Alonso.
I think, yeah, I feel like this is a purely emotional move from Alonso. I feel like if he was smart, he would stick with endurance racing. And if we're going to talk emotional moves, I want to see him do a full season of IndyCar. I want to see him not just hop in for, the Indy 500 and actually get in the car, see how he does against them in a full season. Because honestly, I mean, as we've seen week to week in IndyCar, it's a case of anybody could be a winner on any weekend. If you set up the car right, if you use your experience and your speed right, you can be up there and fighting. And from the way that Alonso has shown himself to be savvy and get everything he can out of a car, I think that he would vie for wins, if not potentially the championship, depending on how quickly he adapts. That said, back to F1, because we're talking that today. I really hope this is a one and done. I hope that he comes in, achieves what he wants, gets, maybe a podium here or there, or maybe sneaks a win if he gets really lucky and says, okay, I ended on a high. That's it. I'm out. Because he's had his long career. It didn't go how he wanted. And it's way too late for him to start up a second career and suddenly find a whole second wave of success. He's not going to have a Niki Lauda moment here.
We're not going to change Alpine from running. I guess I should say Alpine because it's a French team. I'm going to call it Alpine the whole time. We're not going to change them from having Ocon and Alonso as their lineup. That's going to be their lineup. So let's go completely 100% fantasy here. I think going back to the whole experienced and new guy on your team thing here, it'd be nice to have something like Hulkenberg, who has experience with Renault, and Christian Lundgaard, who currently sits third in the Formula 2 Championship and is a Renault Academy driver.
I think that actually sounds like a smart move. I dig that. And honestly, I feel like it's changed in recent seasons, but I still feel like F1 is so hell-bent on driver experience these past 10 years, this past decade, that it's kept new blood from coming in, that a lot of people who maybe should have bowed out a little sooner, or they should have taken a risk on a younger driver, should have gotten a chance, a better opportunity. And you saw a lot of them go to IndyCar or to Formula E or other places just because no openings kept coming up. That's what I want to see more of, is these drivers down in Formula 2 and whatnot to get an opportunity, get a shot at it. And some of these teams take a risk, we've seen with Red Bull's program, their junior program, for so many years. I mean, that's what they were doing, is giving younger guys a shot, said, okay, prove yourself. And it's found some gems. Now, I have a lot of criticisms about how they've been running it, and they maybe should have taken it slower with some people. But in principle, I do like that and want to see some new people get chances more often.
Let's talk about the team that sits sixth in the constructor standings. Which team do you think it is, Joe?
Hopefully a team that does better later in the year than your Italian accent. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, okay, we'll go along with that. I do feel like eating pizza tonight now.
Ooh,
yeah. Ferrari lineup for next season: Leclerc and Sainz. Probably an improvement over Leclerc and Vettel, honestly, I think. But it's not the driver lineup they need to improve.
It's the car.
Yeah. How do you feel if you're Carlos Sainz, knowing that 2022 is only a couple of years away and, Ferrari might have things back on track by then?
I think if I'm Sainz, I'm pulling up Fernando Alonso's number and giving him a call and finding out what another Spanish person going into an ailing Ferrari would suggest. Because very similar, well, not exactly the same, but similar situation. Spanish driver who's pretty good, and suddenly Ferrari is down in the dumps. He's got to be a little bit concerned because Fernando, though he did get wins, never really had the car that he probably needed in those years. So, and we keep talking about that experience. It's not just for comfort that I'm saying, or because I think it's a clever quip. I genuinely think, because Alonso's had a lot of years and he's been through it all and he's made some moves like that where he goes to a team and, well, suddenly that team sucks. He can have advice. Well, what can I do? How do I deal with it mentally? How do I encourage the team? How do I develop the car? All these things that Fernando's probably got a lot of experience in, that he can give him little things that can give him the edge that he's going to probably need, since we're not expecting Ferrari to make a good jump, to make good of a situation that probably is going to be a bit frustrating.
So I feel bad asking this question this time. If you were Ferrari, which two drivers would you choose? Because honestly, I think it's the other way around. Which drivers are willing to race for them right now? Everyone wants to race for Ferrari, just not right at this moment.
Yeah, and it's, I have to wonder. I definitely think there's a few people who would. I think, if you look at their junior team, which at this point is Alfa Romeo.
Hello, welcome back. Sorry for any interruption we may have had. I think Joe was about to say something along the lines of put Giovinazzi or Raikkonen in Ferrari, and our connection freaked out and crashed because it thought that was a silly idea. But go ahead, Joe, defend yourself.
Yeah, Giovinazzi and Raikkonen seem like an obvious choice. I'm pretty sure that Raikkonen would still consider it a better step than where he is right now. And for Giovinazzi, well, he wouldn't be in the driver academy for Ferrari if he didn't really want to be there, even if it was a slightly slower car. The one that I think would be interesting is if they came to George Russell to see if he would be willing, because I think it would be very tempting for him, even if they're not performing well. I could see him saying to Mercedes, like, what do I have to do to get out of my contract? I don't know what he has with them, but I think potentially that could produce some interesting results.
I think Russell does have a strong alliance with the Mercedes Academy, driving academy, that I'm not sure how tempted he would be by that offer. I think the only reason you would see something like that happening is if it was obvious that he had absolutely no hope of getting a Mercedes Works drive. And I think right now he's probably looking at Bottas, falling short of Hamilton, and knowing Hamilton within 5 to 10 to 15 years will reach the end of his Formula One career, depending. He doesn't seem to be slowing down so far. So I think there are incentives for him to keep going at Mercedes, but we'll see. I think it goes without saying that Mick Schumacher is someone that Ferrari would love to have driving for them within the next 10 years or so, maybe even 5 years. And right now, he's actually leading the Formula 2 championship, so why not? He's doing it on consistency, though. He only has one win. And it was interesting. I was taking a look at the Formula 2 point standings, and a lot of top drivers in the points. Callum Ilott and Robert Schwartzman, a lot of top performers in Formula 2 right now are all Ferrari Academy drivers. So, as you mentioned, they have plenty of drivers to choose from going forward. And I'm not sure Giovinazzi or Raikkonen are their best choices.
And I would agree. I think if they're willing to take a risk, they could probably bring them in, but I don't think they need to, because this is a case where probably would be wiser to bring Raikkonen or Giovinazzi over someone who's coming in fresh from Formula 2. I think the fact that they gave a year for Leclerc down in what at the time was it Alfa Romeo yet?
Sauber, I think.
Yeah, I think it was still called Sauber. Anyways, details. Bringing him in down there and letting him get adjusted, see how he fares, because it is still a little bit of a leap. So just edging them in. But I'm glad they took him when he did. And obviously, I mean, easier to say hindsight 2020 that was a smart decision. But clearly, giving him a chance to get adjusted to the craziness that is in Formula One helped them out. And I'd say, temporarily, if they get another case like Leclerc, bring in Giovinazzi or Raikkonen and let someone try out the Sauber the Alfa Romeo. Here we go. The Alfa Romeo and see how they do. Now, you don't necessarily need to up them the very next year. I think it needs to be a case kind of like they saw with Charles, where he really outperforms to give reason to jump someone up quickly again.
All this is hypothetical, though. The fact of the matter is Ferrari have Leclerc and Sainz contracted for next season. That's a great driver lineup. And it's actually a shame to see that, if Ferrari doesn't perform well next season, it's going to be a shame knowing that those drivers will be fighting for points at times, because they're definitely worthy of more than that. This is one question I've been wondering, Joe. If Leclerc ever got sick of racing for Ferrari, that they don't pick up their performance over the past few years, where do you go if you're Leclerc?
Try to see if you can oust Bottas, I think. I don't know. I mean, at least ask. See if they'd be interested. I doubt they would. I think realistically that they're happy with Valtteri and the way that he's performing. Like you said, he's essentially become a number two, which is a bit sad, but that's the reality of things. If not, Red Bull, obviously, I doubt that they would parachute him in, since they're so devoted to their program. So, I mean, other than that, I think McLaren would be a good choice for Leclerc, potentially, if for some reason he wanted to dip, or what will be Aston Martin.
Yeah. I could see him replacing Vettel at Aston Martin maybe in a couple of years, if nothing happened at Ferrari.
Yeah.
Let's move on from that, though, because Leclerc Sainz is a lineup for next year, and that's a good lineup. AlphaTauri. I feel smart for the amount of research and preparation I did going into this, but I just realized I have absolutely not studied the Red Bull Driver Academy at all. I think, there's one driver in Formula 2 who keeps doing really good, and I'm going to have to look up on my phone because he drives the Red Bull liveried car. Gasly and Kvyat are their current lineup. I don't think anyone's contracted with them for next season. We've already established that Gasly should be that number two, should be one of the drivers. I think Liam Lawson is the driver I'm thinking of. Let me double check that while you share your thoughts. But would you keep Kvyat, or would you go for someone like a Red Bull Academy driver, which I think is Liam Lawson? Where's my phone?
I think they should go for a new driver. Kvyat he's okay. He did decently when he was up there, and he's come back and he's had a podium when they were Toro Rosso last season. He's fared well, but
Liam Lawson.
There you go. Okay, Liam Lawson. Well, I think I want to say that I'd heard talk, and I can't remember his name. I think they have a Japanese driver, don't they?
Yes, Sonoda.
Yeah. And there's been talk of, they want that for, the Honda engine in there. I don't know how he's performing, though. I haven't followed closely.
He's doing well. I think he's done well. Both him and Lawson. I could only just remember one off the top of my head. But yeah, no, they're both doing all right.
I think either or then, in that case, if they're both doing decently enough. Because, I mean, this goes back to what I said before, where, people have had their shot at times in F1, and sometimes they just need to get some fresh blood in there to get people a chance, just because there's so few seats. And Kvyat's been around the block multiple times now. In fact, he's on his third or fourth shot or something right now. Yeah. So it's like, and with his experience, honestly, he probably could find himself another seat. I think if he found the sponsorship money, he could probably hop over somewhere like Williams or something and see how he'd fare somewhere. That's if he wants to keep racing in F1. Put one of the junior drivers in
alongside Gasly. All right, let's group the next two teams together, Alfa Romeo and Haas. They're both Ferrari-backed teams. They have four drivers in there that I would argue are four of the lower performing drivers across all of Formula One. Kimi Raikkonen, past his prime, Giovinazzi, I don't think has ever really proven himself. Grosjean has his good moments, but also has very bad moments. If there's one driver in there who I think consistently does all right, it's Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah, I was going to say when you were talking about underperforming, I was like,
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
more the car than Kevin, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep Kevin Magnussen. But again, we go back to all these Ferrari, Formula Two drivers, Mick Schumacher, Callum Ilott, Robert Schwartzman. Do you get rid of Kimi, Giovinazzi, Grosjean, bringing all this new blood?
Kimi, yes. Kimi is just kind of going through the motions. I think definitely replace him. Giovinazzi is a bit of a toss-up. I think it'll depend on how good some of their drivers do come the end of the season. Looking at it as a whole, because I don't think Giovinazzi's done super poorly. He's basically been kind of just an okay pair of hands, not super quick, nothing really spectacular that catches your eye so far. But I mean, he's been giving a world champion a run for his money in some cases. And even if he's past his prime, Raikkonen still is a multi-time winner. He's a world champion, and that says something that he's been able to perform well against him. So as for Grosjean, I have a weird soft spot for him because he races my number, which is number 8. So I want him to do better and to be a little bit more cool-headed about certain things. So he kind of disappoints me in that way. But again, he's another one he's had opportunities, and I think maybe he needs to start looking elsewhere, either for another seat or needs to look into other series. I think Grosjean would be interesting, putting him into an endurance series, either IMSA or WEC, just because I feel like that could help his inconsistency. That maybe if he could have that where the focus is, you just got to keep rifling off laps and you don't have to be mega fast. That would maybe help him a lot.
Two things I want to say. The first is that my number has been taken by George Russell in Formula One. So it's kind of, it almost seems like you're watching the same series when you watch Lionheart and when you watch Formula One, where you see the number 63 racing at the back, but you're like, oh, that driver can do a lot better, but he never does.
Sure.
Yeah. And the second thing I was going to say, on a more serious note, there was a driver they had on the Beyond the Grid podcast with Tom Clarkson recently, and I do not remember the name. No, do not remember the name. But there was someone who said, racing sports cars is one of the best things you can do to yourself to become a well-rounded race car driver, because you have to deal with traffic, you have to deal with strategy, you have to deal with changing conditions throughout a day to night, night to day race. And, it made me think, I need to start racing more sports cars on iRacing. Because I'm like, that is a really smart point.
Maybe that's why I did so well. I've always done so well doing, just keeping the car together, because that's what I did for a long time, was just those endurance races. So I have to agree. I whoever wound up saying that knows what they were talking about. And I hate that it's seen as a step down. I wish endurance racing had some of the prestige that F1 did, so that we could see more drivers be willing to kind of maybe take a year away or maybe do some moonlighting. I would love to see more Mario Andretti's of the world, where that just, is it fast? Is it fun? I'm there, sort of thing, which is what I love about what Alonso's been doing the past few years.
Well, let's give a shout out then, because there is one prestigious endurance race that you can never take away, the 24 Hour of Le Mans, this weekend, 8:30 a.m. Saturday at Eastern time in the United States, and finishes 8:30 a.m. Sunday Eastern time in the United States. Do I need to explain the math behind that? Hopefully not.
How many hours is that?
somewhere between 23 and 25. All right, we got one more team left to go here, Joe. It's the Williams Formula One team. Let's be honest, it's the team that you are going to go to if you want to ride in Formula One, but you haven't proven yourself yet.
Yeah. You're willing to sell yourself on the cheap, and you at least are competent enough that you've got the license, and they trust that you can handle the car. Latifi, well, I mean, we've talked at length about George Russell, so let's jump over George for now.
Well, let's also jump on the fact that Latifi and Russell is the confirmed lineup for next season.
Yes.
So we can completely go bonkers here.
Okay, so Latifi, I think would be is honestly a good choice to keep for them. If we were doing it like the actual NFL pick, since they're the last team and they'd have first choice on whoever's on. If it was based on who is on the free market, either Perez or Hulkenberg, most obviously. If it was anybody they could choose from, well, take Max or Lewis. But as far as realistically and where things are, if they could sway Hulkenberg in, I think that he would be someone that they should probably try and get in there just to get some more experience alongside George, and someone who could maybe stay out of trouble and get some results in, and probably help develop the car at this point. Because I have to imagine that Nico's probably, with the amount of years that he had out there, knows how to try and get the thing at least up and running a little bit better. If we're going really wild, I think it'd be kind of cool if maybe Williams gave a poke to some of the drivers over in IndyCar that seem like they have promise, could be lured. You look at guys like Rinus VeeKay, who has been racing very well. Now, it might be tough because if you're winning an IndyCar, a lot of times what I hear from them is, why would I go to a team at the very back of the grid in F1 when I can win over here? But you never know. I think VeeKay would be an interesting choice to maybe see what he could do. Or Palau is another one that I've been kind of seeing do decent here and there. He hasn't been stunning, but I think maybe they could be like, hey, have you ever had dreams of F1? You want to give it a shot? Here's what we're doing to try and not suck. So there's some things out there.
Roy Nissany is a driver they've had in a couple practice sessions recently, I think. Isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I want to say that isn't he though? I'm pretty sure he is related to the Nissany that was known for being absolutely terrible, isn't he?
There's a lot. I mean, look at Max Verstappen. Is
True.
That necessarily a bad thing?
Yeah, no, it's not all down to blood. Yeah. It's there's skill and practice involved and raw talent. It amuses me though. It did with Verstappen as well. That it was like, wait a minute, Verstappen? That's not a name that like really inspires confidence. It didn't in the past, at least.
Okay. I hate that I'm saying this is a wild or a crazy idea because, and I'm going to give away my choice with my next pronoun here. She is a Williams Academy driver. Let's go Jamie Chadwick,
Yes.
in the future. Let's get our W Series champion into Formula One. All right, this is the third time the charm for those of you watching who don't know what we've been going through. Joe, I say Jamie Chadwick. The internet connection keeps dropping. You say...
I say absolutely. As soon as you said it, I don't know why I didn't think of it before. I changed my answer. Jamie Chadwick. I want to see her in that car because I want to see some representation. I want to see more women get a shot at driving an F1.
All right, so there we go. Joe finally got it out. Let's get Jamie Chadwick on the grid, or potentially, another female driver will hopefully work her way up from W Series in the future. I know Bajki Vissa, I think, has been doing well. I think I'm going to have to double check on this. I think she has an LMP2 drive at the 24 Hour of Le Mans this weekend. I'll have to double check on that one, but good luck to her if that's the case.
Yeah.
All right. we've done our full grid here, Joe. So 24-hour of Le Mans this weekend, MotoGP, NASCAR at Bristol, Formula One finally gets an off week, and then they go to more crazy races that they haven't been to for a while. I guess my final question, completely off topic, which race are you most looking forward to the end of this year? The Bahrain, Inner Loop, Imola, or Portugal? I think that's mine, Portugal.
Bahrain, I'd say.
Because it's so short?
Yeah, it's different. I'm one of those fans that says bring more different types of tracks in, and that is a very different track from what they usually run. So I think it'll give us something different to look at. I mean, I did not expect Mugello to give us a different race, just because I thought it was going to be another Spain, another Barcelona, with the way that it has a lot of sweeping turns and very little passing opportunities. And lo and behold, that was not the case at all. And I'm looking for different things and new stuff, and Bahrain brings that in spades.
All right. Well, again, 24-hour of Le Mans this weekend, MotoGP, NASCAR at Bristol, plenty of exciting racing coming up. And off track, we've got all this silly season conversation going on in Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR that keeps the whole motor racing world entertaining. Well, we appreciate you all for tuning in. Joe, thank you for coming to talk, and I hope you enjoy all the racing this weekend.
You too, man. Thanks again.